It starts with a flicker or a shadow at the edge of your vision, a rustle in tall grass. Before your mind forms a thought, your heart is already pounding, muscles tighten, breath catches. In that instant, you're no longer sitting in a safe modern world. You're back in the savannah, where the difference between stillness and survival was measured in milliseconds. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, early humans who hesitated at a snapping twig didn't live long enough to pass on their genes. But the ones who overreacted, who treated a harmless sound as a predator, that bias toward false alarms became part of our biological inheritance, a neural insurance policy written by evolution itself. It's why your brain still screams danger at deadlines, public speaking, or your partner's cold tone of voice.
Welcome to Extreme Brains, the podcast that embraces the chaos of a world gone wild. I'm David Evanoff, along with my fellow brainers and chaos enthusiasts, Sam Goldstein and James Woods. We are broadcasting to you from the semi-luxurious Evanoff Studios, located on the west side of the over-industrialized haven of South Salt Lake City, Utah. South Salt Lake City, Utah, the only place you can be south and west at the same time. Each week we'll dive headfirst into the absurdities of modern life, sharing sharp critiques, unfiltered humor, and just the right amount of existential dread. Our tagline, 3 voices, 1 mic, in a world gone wild. Wow! Season 2, my brain is on danger. That was exciting, that was dramatic, but I think super important because...
Well, let me give you guys a hypothetical.
Please.
So which would you rather do? You're walking down the street and you see some gnarly looking guy, 6'6", big guy, looks like a biker on LSD maybe, and he's coming towards you and you're thinking, you know, this could be bad. So you cross the street. As opposed to you keep walking and maybe it's bad, maybe it's not. But that's a probability. If you cross the street, it's a guarantee of safety. Okay? I'll give you another hypothetical. The end of the world comes. Right? So it's the end of the world. And
it feels like it might be coming.
And all those, yeah, could be. And all those good Mormons have stashed away a year, 2 years worth of food. Some of them are a little paranoid. They stash 4 years worth of food. And I don't have any food. So I knock on the door. Oh, hi, neighbor. Hi, brother. You think you might share some food with me? No. Screw you. Bam! I have a baseball bat behind me. I hit him over the head with the baseball bat. Take their food. Which would you rather do? Say, sorry, neighbor, I just haven't been a good religious person, and I haven't listened to God. I haven't saved food, and now I'm going to starve. And I certainly understand that you don't want to share your food with me. You're going to die. But if you hit him with the bat, you're going to live. So, the brain evolved to help us survive danger, risk. So, think of 1 million years ago, our early human ancestors. There's something going on TikTok now showing aliens with monkeys coming to the earth. Somebody posted this series. Have you seen it?
Yep.
Of these Roswell-looking aliens teaching the monkeys how to be people, or whatever the case may be. Right? It's pretty interesting. I don't know who made it and why they would put it on TikTok. I don't have any idea. But imagine it's those monkeys, and you are the prey. Everything is bigger than you. Everything is stronger than you. Everything has sharper teeth than you. So you spend a lot of time avoiding danger. If you remember last episode or last season when we talked about sleep, we discussed that one of the reasons we may have evolved to sleep is because we sleep when the sun is gone and it's dark out, which is an even more dangerous time for us to survive. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So 1 million years ago, it paid to devote a significant percentage of what your brain was doing to keeping you alive. And one way to keep alive was find food, find shelter, find water. Fine. But that wouldn't be enough if some saber-toothed tiger cornered you in a cave. So you spent a lot of time looking around, looking to see where the danger was so you could avoid it or confront it or whatever the case may be. So there we have your brain on danger. So why haven't we evolved?
Danger has morphed.
Danger has morphed.
It's followed us for millions of years. Right?
It's different kind of danger today, right?
Mm-hmm.
and because the brain is wired to err on the side of risk, meaning if it could be dangerous, I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to strike out. I'm not going to let it play out.
Right, because millions of years ago, if you made the other choice, you probably died. If you didn't avoid the scary sound.
Correct, and your genes are out of the big ballpark of evolution.
Yeah.
And if you remember when we talked last season about the unholy trinity of instincts, one of those was an aggressive response to real or perceived danger. That if you strike first, your chance of survival increase. If you believe that someone who's different from you could cause you harm, you avoid them. Your chances of survival could increase, right?
So overreaction would save you more than underreaction.
So overreaction saves you. So now let's examine today's world. Go ahead. Give me an example of when you were afraid. What did you do?
Well,
afraid for your daughter. Afraid for your...
Craig said at the end, you hear your wife call.
Right.
Something that simple still can make you nervous, filled with anxiety. Uh-oh.
Right. It's better safe than sorry.
Right.
Right? So now you look at the infectious nature of it, meaning you read into it, you get that, what's that feeling you get when you think something's really going wrong? There's going to be some problem here, something's going to happen.
Right.
And you get that sensation, maybe the hairs on the back of your neck, or suddenly you feel a chill, or whatever the case may be.
Your anxiety ramps up.
Spidey senses.
Your anxiety ramps up. Because what is anxiety, as we've discussed last season? A fear that outcome's not going to be good. So now you see the relationship between, hey, if I can avoid danger, I can better predict and be less anxious and less worried about what's going to happen.
Right.
Right? So it's this better safe than sorry. Right? So now we say, well, that worked out pretty well when we were a little tribe. But as we start living next to each other, and there's more chance of conflict, more opportunities for mistaken attribution. You want something, but you really don't. I think you do. Now you begin to see why we're a society that is rampantly afraid. And when you look at the brain, the brain has an autonomic nervous system. You can say, well, why do we need two nervous systems, autonomic and non-autonomic, or I don't remember what the term is, but why do we need two? Well, because the autonomic, really developed to avoid danger. It's fight or flight, avoid danger. And when that happens, heart beats, the vagus nerve releases control over the heart beats faster. The heart sends messages up to the brain. We discussed that last season too, for those of you that missed it. We never say he's got great liver. We say he's got great heart. We see the heart as a source of goodness, rationality, control. In fact, perhaps our brain should be in our heart. Our heart should maybe do our thinking. It's an impossibility, but the heart sends a lot of messages up to the brain. And so in the world we live in today, tell me a day that doesn't go by when something doesn't confront you in the news, in your personal life, whatever, that ramps up your cortisol. We all run higher levels of cortisol. We all are kind of on the edge.
And our stress system is misfiring at non-lethal triggers.
Correct. Because we think we need that to stay alive. Look at the politics of today. Look at the crazy stuff that's going on. This kind of dates the podcast as today's date, but look at the crazy stuff that's going on. I raised this question about, is this combination of our brains on danger creating more adversity? More adversity creates more perception of risk, which creates more extreme activities and leads the brain to spend even more time focused on what's wrong. So let me ask you, how much of your day do you spend lamenting on what's wrong versus what's right?
Easily much more time on what's wrong.
Right.
Right.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Right.
From the time you get up and you can look at your schedule, that's wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Politically, this is wrong, this is wrong. Socially, here in town, this is wrong. Oh, the traffic is wrong. That's where our focus is.
My coffee tastes like shit.
Right. Well, right.
Yeah.
So it feeds on itself. We're eating ourselves from the inside out because of a set of instincts that developed a million years ago or over millions of years to keep us alive. How do you change that? What is it about human evolution? How do we get to from where we are? The world is a dangerous, evil place, and everybody's out to get you. So you better get them first. To Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, where all the species live together, except, of course, the Romulans and the Klingons, the bad guys. But everybody else is perfectly happy and good. And even the Romulans and the Klingons, who I could always never tell them apart. When you looked at them, they all look the same. They've got that facial look. But they're kind of, they're Roddenberry's explanation is they're two species on the dark side. That somewhere in their evolution, imagine if think about the Mayans, who were very violent people. Imagine if the Spanish came over to conquer the Mayans 400 or 500 years ago, and the Mayans completely beat the shit out of them. So now no Europeans, and the Mayans in their victory subjugate the Europeans, and they spread across the Americas. And today we're all descendants of the Mayans, right? So can you imagine what sports would be? All death sports. You'd have to find new athletes every year because they would all die except for the ones that lived. It kills everybody else off. It didn't happen that way it didn't happen that way partly not because the Europeans were so much smarter, but because they carried illnesses that the Mayans had never had before. And they killed the Mayans in kind of in an indirect way. Here, let me breathe on you, and you're going to die. Which is what Columbus did, right?
Yeah.
All those tribes died because they had built up no immune system, which is why when mothers nowadays don't let their kids get into the dirt, it's a mistake because kids should probably eat 5 pounds of dirt before they turn 2. Now, I'm not giving Dr. Spock advice here, but if you don't expose them to these things, they don't build up any antibodies, and they don't. So let's come back to where we are here. The brain has a large number of organs that are devoted to this. When I say organs, we're talking about parts of the brain.
Okay.
Right? And this kind of danger, think about a wild dog, or a dog behind a fence or whatever. He's growling at you. You're no threat to him. He doesn't really know that, so he's assuming everything is a threat. That's the default position.
Yeah.
Everybody could hurt me, therefore. Right. And when you think about it in a logical way, in a game theory way, that's not a bad theory. It's like the kids I play with who play Fortnite. Have you guys played Fortnite?
I have not.
Have you seen it?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's brilliant because the game's over in 10 minutes and you can play a lot of games. And there's you and 100 other people in a flying bus. Who knows? I mean, the person who created it must have been on acid, a Timothy Leary acolyte. And you jump out of the bus, and you land on this island, and you find weapons, and the last person standing wins the match, right? And you can play 2 men. So some of the kids I see in counseling, and a lot of kids now are prone to playing video games, some because they're kind of addicted to it, but some because they don't have anything better to do. Kids tell me that all the time. If I had something better to do, I would do it. So I'm on the bus with this kid who's pretty good at Fortnite. Okay, he says to me, jump off the bus now. Keep in mind, there's 98 people who are going to land down there who want to kill me, right? So he jumps, and I'm still looking. I wonder if there's a good place to land. And he jumps. By the time I get on the ground, he's found 6 weapons and killed 40 people. Come on, he says, hurry up, come over here. And I said, I'm going to hide, and you kill everybody, and when they're all gone, I'll come out. I'll help you kill the last one, right? And some kids play Fortnite like that. They don't ever win, but they don't really lose because they land, they find a place to hide, and they wait until there's 3 people left on the on the island. And of course, they come out, and they're not very good at the game, so they get immediately killed, right? So there's danger. Your brain, on danger. It does speak to whether we should be designing video games to help sublimate this kind of danger instinct. So maybe you learn to think before you react, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean...
Well, it does seem that the game plays into this basic instinct, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They all do. Think about these video games. There was one game on what's the name of that website that has lots of games on it. People post their games on it. And that they were using it to indoctrinate kids to do violent acts. I mean, there's been some bad things happening using games like this. But when you look at these games, the one that attracts, you'd think, oh, Sim City. But they don't hold kids' interest. They don't. And put a gun in my hand and let me shoot something.
First-person shooter games.
And I'm right. So what is that all about, right? And I shoot everybody. Why? Because it's dangerous. And I shoot you before I even ask you who you are.
Yeah.
But before
say
that,
hello.
before video games, people were playing cops and robbers with cap guns.
Right. Right. But still but it was, I think the danger was less visceral.
Sure.
It was really a whole lot less visceral. So you have the amygdala, which is constantly scanning that part of your brain. It's constantly, under the consciousness. We talk about awareness, multitasking. Brain doesn't multitask, because we've talked about you focus on one thing, but the brain has evolved to track lots of things. And if one of those things rises to a point where you need to pay attention to it, it tells you, it shifts you. So the amygdala is out there looking, just always looking like that, like the little ground squirrel who's standing up,
All right.
the little meerkat
Yeah.
who's always looking for danger, right? Mm-hmm. Think about meerkats. So they're very friendly with each other, but they're very heightened sense of danger. And then if the amygdala thinks, maybe there's something out here, then we get the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus has to make a decision. Is this bullshit, or do we need to act? And I can tell you, 100% of the time, the hypothalamus says, hey, I'm not taking any chances. We're acting.
Here's some adrenaline.
Here's some adrenaline. Here's some other kinds of
Cortisol.
things. And then the front of the brain says, wait a minute. That creaking you heard while you're in bed, that's just the house settling. There is nobody breaking into this house. Except that the front of the brain gets information about the world a few milliseconds after the amygdala and the hypothalamus, the prefrontal cortex, because the brain built from the back forward.
So the amygdala is the first.
It's the middle of the brain, yeah.
Is the first trigger.
Right. But it makes a decision. It tells the hypothalamus, danger, Will Robinson. The hypothalamus says, hey, we're not screwing around here. Let's get ourselves geared up for fight or flight. The front of the brain is an observer watching, and the front of that's Freud's kind of id, ego, superego. And the front of the brain says, now wait a minute, let's analyze this. And the hypothalamus says, screw you. I'm not waiting for some guy with a gun to come in and shoot us. Get up, grab that knife, and go see if there's anybody in the house. And tell me, we'll take a break here, but tell me if there isn't 1 or 2 nights a week when you're laying in bed and you hear a sound or you think of something and your brain goes to danger. The hypothalamus says, oh, I wonder. The amygdala says, is this danger? The hypothalamus says, let's assume it's danger. And the front of the brain says, hey, it's the middle of the night. It's dark. I don't really want to get up, but what if there's that 1% chance that it's really a bad guy? I better go take a look, as if taking a look is somehow going to save you. And I'll leave this with the kid who won't sleep in his own room, who tells me, I only sleep with my parents because because I'm afraid. And I said, you really think if some big burglar broke into your house, your parents are going to be able to save you? Of course, then I made the kid worse. It's a good thing I have health, I have liability insurance. Oh, they're not going to be able to save me? Now what am I going to do? Oh. Get me a dog. Hurry up.
So in high stress, the amygdala, can it override?
No.
What the prefrontal cortex is saying, like slow down?
No.
If you're already in a high stress situation?
Yeah. Again, the front of the brain gets information a few milliseconds after the back of the brain. And I joke sometimes, we've talked about this, that the hind brain, the old brain, the amygdala, hypothalamus, are Klingons. Mm. We're going to fight.
Yeah.
That's how we got where we are. Is we don't get where we are by sitting back. We get where we are by chaos and mayhem. And the front of the brain is Mr. Spock, who says, "Hey, let's take it easy. Let's consider this." But Mr. Spock, if you really piss him off, he grabs you by the neck with the Vulcan death grip, and you're gone.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's take a little break then, and we'll be right back with segment 2.
History remembers the heroes. We remember the truth. Alamo, Voice of Freedom, follows Joe, an enslaved man who survived the Alamo and carried its untold story. Love, betrayal, and sacrifice come alive in this cinematic podcast. One mission, one survivor, one story you've never heard. Alamo, Voice of Freedom, on all major podcast platforms.
Welcome back. Segment 2, Season 2, Episode 1. But first, Sam, tell us a little bit about Alamo. That's super exciting. I'm honored to have been a part of it.
Thanks. Alamo was the second musical that Graham Russell of Air Supply fame and Craig Clyde and I wrote as a stage production musical. It's been sitting since before COVID, quite a long time. As you're aware, it's hard to raise money for theater. Those of you that travel for theater or live in London, watch for our musical, Dead Certain, which we are hoping will air in London. We're pretty confident it's going to open in London in the theater district in the summer of next year, 2026.
Here.
So we decided, in an effort to get some visibility, we would create a radio play, like an old-fashioned radio play, but with music. And we've been fortunate because we had some very talented people who've participated, people nobody knows. It's amazing the talent people have. And we were also fortunate that Graham, when we had first envisioned this production, Graham had gone in the studio and recorded versions of the songs. So we had productions of each song to work from, change keys, add instruments. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would encourage anybody who's listening to this. The first episode we made fairly short. It's 16 minutes. It won't hold you for too long. If you don't like it,
14, I think.
Well, don't come back. But we purposely made it. I purposely made it short, so that if you liked it, good. I'm hooked. I'll sign up. I want to hear the next episode. And by the way, it's free. When do you get anything for free anymore?
Musical for free?
We're not selling you anything. Although if you want to send money, we'll take it. But there's no T-shirts, there's no mugs, there's no pins, there's no...
Yet.
We're not selling anything. And if there are those of you out there that listen to it that are somehow involved with theater production, even locally, like in a smaller city, and say, wow, we want to put this on. Let me know. I think the time is right to bring voices to historical events of the people who were there that didn't have a voice. And that's why I think Alamo's a good place to start. But I think there are a lot of other historical events when there are people who were along for the ride who didn't make any of the decisions.
A lot of stories we haven't heard.
Right. And talk about danger. And I will say, what you heard if you listened to that short narration for the show is Joe was really there. We know he was a slave there. We don't know anything about him. And so we have taken liberties and given voices to these people, thinking this is probably what they would have thought or would have said. We don't know. But it clearly wasn't their fight. And they were clearly stuck there in that fight.
Yeah.
And so it's the story of the Alamo is told through people who were forced to be there, who didn't have a horse in the race, didn't have a stake in the end game, and ironically were spared.
There's a bribery.
By Santa Anna,
Yeah.
right? But think about the danger there. So they lived in that siege for multiple weeks, never knowing when they would be
when the
attacked.
attack's coming.
Right,
Yeah.
because the siege was multiple weeks. And when they're not there in the months before, you could say, well, they're not here. It looks like everything's okay. But when you hear their trumpets and you see their fires and you know they're here to get you, you wonder, did anybody sleep in those multiple weeks during that period of time? It is irrelevant to this whole idea of danger, right? And it's particularly relevant, talking about the amygdala or the hypothalamus, it's particularly relevant when you have control over what you do. So let me give you an example. So there are two monkeys in an experiment. I don't do these experiments, just by the way.
No animals were harmed.
I was a rat researcher years ago. I decided I like people better than rats, and I left it. But I've never experimented, excuse me, on anything but rats. Goldfish. It's amazing what you can teach goldfish to do.
Wow.
And it's a good marketing idea. We could sell a train your goldfish kit could come in the mail with the goldfish and the tank and the button. And when the light goes on, the goldfish pushes the button and gets a piece of food. And we could train it to do a lot of stuff.
Have you ever thought, I'm done with people now, I'm going back to rats?
No. I never.
Good. We need your help.
I never have. Did you see that video in New York City the other couple of days ago? Woman's driving along and a rat climbs out from between the windshield and her hood outside. It had somehow gotten into her engine and it climbs out on the hood of her car and she's driving and this rat is running around. Pretty funny.
New York.
New York, right. But so the monkeys, coming back to the monkeys. So the one monkey is yoked to the other one, meaning the one monkey has no decision-making power. And the other monkey has to make a decision. And if he makes the wrong decision, then they get an electric shock. Not that hurts them, but again, I wouldn't do this research with monkeys. I think it's unethical. But it's been done. But it's been done with other animals as well. And the animal that goes along for the ride, right? And I think I misspoke a minute ago. The animal that goes along for the ride is the animal that generates the greatest fear and danger because they have no decision-making power. They're just along for the ride, and they never know what's coming next. And the animal that makes the decision, well, if it's the wrong decision, it's not happy, right? But it has some control. So that's the second part of this is, what happens when not only are you in a perception or perceived dangerous situation, but you also think, I don't have any control over this. So when you're laying in bed at night, you hear a sound, you have some control. You could lay there and say, it's nothing, and go back to sleep. You can get up and try and do something about it to relieve your fear and calm your hypothalamus and let the prefrontal cortex take over. But if you have no choice, right, then you're the one who's going to suffer. So when your wife's laying in bed next to you and says, James, did you hear that sound? Get up and go do something. And you say, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. It's just a creaking in the floor or whatever. And James, I hear it. It could be. she's the one who's going to develop all the problems, not you. Even if it's even if it turns out to be a raccoon that climbed in your dog door, that's now rattling around in your kitchen, which we know happens.
Yeah.
It's your wife who's going to suffer because she perceives she has no control, and you say, "Get up and check yourself," and she says, "Oh, no, I can't do that." So she has no choice, right? So now we move to the next step of making a decision in an acute situation. I'm in bed, I got to make a decision, versus maybe chronic stress, where there's a load on you day after day after day. So when we talk about post-traumatic stress, it's a condition that evolves as a consequence of danger. You don't just wake up and get in your car and drive to work and say, "Oh, I have post-traumatic stress." There has to be a stressor. And
Can it come from perceived danger as well?
yes, and it can come from reported danger after the fact. So you could have a brain injury and have no memory for days before, days after, and you wake up in the hospital and you've been in a coma for 5 days and you've got 4 or 5 broken bones and you have a head injury, and you wake up and the last thing you remember is 2 weeks before, and somebody says, "Well, you've been in a car accident." What? That, boom, there's an immediate rush of cortisol, and oh my God, what am I okay? Is somebody dead? Right. I was in the car with my friend. Is he okay? No, I'm sorry, he's dead. Whoa. Right? So that's acute stress. One episode. We think that's a lot easier to treat than people who've been in danger chronically over time. Right? So people who've been in danger chronically over time, like someone who's in a very abusive relationship, or war victims, or even the soldiers who day after day their amygdala is on high alert, right? Think about earlier battles, World War I, for example, where they spent a lot of time in these trenches.
You're in the trench for
You're in the
years.
trench, hearing sounds, waiting, whatever the case may be. That amygdala is working all the time, right? It's kind of a wear and tear on your brain. It's a wear and tear on your organs, and the prefrontal cortex tries to shut it down. Go to sleep, take it easy, but you can't.
Can't do it.
You can't do it. One of the most effective tortures is they put you in a room and keep the lights on 24 hours and play heavy metal music, and blare heavy metal. You can't relax. You're on, and it sets off the hypothalamus. What are they going to do next? Are they going to fill the room with water? Are they going to, the hypothalamus is constant. Look at what's going on here. Where's the danger here? What could be happening here? Right? And the body just kind of gets worn out. So now you think, again, it's this complex phenomena of how we learned. I said how, that's interesting. But how we learned, how we learned to adapt to danger, that in our ancestors, Homo sapiens, in earlier humanoid species, go back 1 million years, in species before that, maybe 2 or 3 million years, they survived by being sensitive to danger, right? And you look at a moose. We were kayaking once, river rafting and kayaking, on the middle fork of the Salmon, and we came around a bend in a particular narrow spot. The Salmon's up in Idaho, for those who don't know. It's a real rafting spot. I used to do a lot of rafting, and in the middle of the river was a moose, up to his haunches in the water. Water's running by, but he's a big moose, so he's crossing the water with this gigantic. They call them antlers. I don't know what they call them on moose, but they're bigger than antlers because they're. And he turns.
Nice rack.
A rack, right? Nice rack. And he turns and looks at us, and he stops walking. So we eddy out. We're fortunate we could see him. We pull out and just sit. And he stands in that river over an hour.
Wow.
This cold running river, like, come on, I'm not afraid of you.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're at the top of the chain, you don't have, you're not, nothing, you don't fear anything. Right? So I would argue that the moose isn't afraid of anything. So it's rare he's going to push a lot of cortisol, other than if he's in a mating, fight with another moose. But nothing scares him. Now look at us. Everything scares us.
Yeah.
So if you go back on an evolutionary basis, and we say, oh, we're the top of the top. We're the king of the species. We're humans. Everybody else is an animal. Well, bullshit. Because if we were a moose, we wouldn't have this problem. Because nothing would scare us.
Would earlier ancestors have high cortisol?
Yeah, or earliest human ancestors.
Yeah, constant.
Yeah. And look at rats, Well, maybe you didn't know. I don't want to upset you, but if you go back on ontogeny, recapitulating phylogeny, meaning development, go back kind of that evolutionary chain, we were rats a couple of million years ago. Mm-hmm. Maybe more, I don't know. But it's very clear
I know a few now.
that we evolved from rats, which is why we study rats for drug studies, because their brain chemistry is nearly identical to ours.
Wow.
It's really the only species, I think, whose chemistry, like serotonin, dopamine, is very similar to ours. And when you look at rats, when a rat's not paying attention, it's sleeping. It's always looking for danger, looking for food, looking for safety. It's, watch that rat looking around. Oh, Jesus, what going on? It's always looking. And if, in fact, we were moose, we wouldn't be this way. We would have an amygdala that would take a vacation. There's nothing dangerous here. I'm going to go to the Bahamas for a while. And we would have a hypothalamus that would say, boy, there's not a whole lot for me to do here, but I'll stay awake if there's a need be. And we would have a prefrontal cortex that said, danger? What's that? Right? It's interesting. Now, you look at some animals, I alluded to this earlier in our discussion. You look at some animals like in the Galapagos, where they haven't been exposed.
Right. No fear.
No fear. But they do fear things. They just don't fear us because they have no experience with us. But I guarantee if the experiment was, well, let's go to one island in the Galapagos and chase all the seals, I guarantee you within a short period of time, the seals would run away. Oh, I'm not messing with that thing.
Yeah.
So they have the same fight or flight nervous system. I mean, I think this is pretty interesting. We're not moose.
Right.
And wouldn't it be great if we were?
Yeah.
Nothing scares me. Bring it on. Bring it,
Mm-hmm.
But we're not. And so that's how our brains evolved. And PTSD, which we've talked about in a previous episode, is the brain's ability to keep reminding you of danger. And if you could have a conversation, let's have a conversation with James' brain. And you're James.
Okay.
And I'm the rational prefrontal cortex. And you've been in a car accident, and you're not in a car now, but you're dreaming about it. And if you watch TV, you see a car, you get flashbacks. Okay, go ahead. Tell me about what's going on in your brain right now.
That sound over there reminded me of an accident. Everything triggers.
But James, it reminds you, but it's not the real thing. What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
It's not real. Mm-hmm. Tell your brain to shut off.
To shut up.
Just stop it.
Calm down, brain.
Don't do it. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the exact conversation I have every night with my brain
Oh, okay.
before bed.
Right.
Calm down.
Well, there you go. But there you go, right? Mm-hmm. And if you were, let's switch roles. You be the prefrontal cortex and tell me to calm down, right?
Calm down.
Right. Well,
it's
listen.
not real.
Yeah. Do you understand why I'm here today as a Homo sapien? Because for hundreds of thousands of years, everything scared the shit out of me. Yeah. And if I didn't remember there were bears in caves and there were lions in the gully, and if you drank this dirty water, you would die, and if you ate the blueberries, you're going to die. If I didn't remember those things, I'd be dead. So I'm not forgetting this car accident, because maybe, just maybe, I'm going to be in another accident, and I need to remember that. And your response to that is, what are you, an idiot? You're not. It's not a million years ago. It's not. We are burdened by this ancestral set of qualities. In this case, they all revolve around danger. Right?
Wow.
And think about anxiety. We've talked about worry. Well, what is anxiety? A lack of confidence in predicting outcome. So you tend to have a hyperactive amygdala that sees danger everywhere, and a hypothalamus that doesn't know how to distinguish what's real from not real. And your life is spent as if you're in a dark alley in the middle of the night in a bad neighborhood.
Instead of a tiger, it could be an email or
Could be
a
anything.
task, a deadline.
Yeah.
Right, it could be anything. You get an email and you see who it's from, and you go, oh, shit.
Oh, God.
Do I want to open this?
Yeah, your blood pressure goes up. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I don't know if your blood pressure goes up, but definitely you're on alert.
Yeah. Although I've had that email, when you see the name and you go, my pulse just went up, just
Or it's you're hoping it's going to turn out one way, and you open the email
And it's the
and it's another way. And it's not danger, but you get this sense of being let down. And I'll talk to people who have anxiety who don't open their emails. Why? Because they don't want to take the chance it could be something negative. Even though they can rationally say, it's not going to be anything negative, but I don't want to take the chance. Right?
Well, here's a question. Does it help to tell that brain, calm down, it's not real? Or is that just...
No, that's how we do it.
That's how we do it.
Right, that's how we do it. So in today's world, this system that's multiple parts of the brain, so it evolved over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, the system that once saved your life, that system now sabotages your well-being. Right? So the front of the brain and the middle of the brain, I think there's a war, right? And I think that the front of the brain says, let's create society, let's create culture, let's create relationships, let's do all. And the middle of the brain says, you're just making more trouble for me. You're just creating more circumstances, more situations in which I have to make decisions about safety, about risk, about I don't want to do this. What I want to do is be safe. And in response, what you say is, I'm not going to leave my house. I'm not going to open emails. I'm not going to, I'm not going to try new foods. I'm not going to
talk to this
I'm not going to talk to anybody.
Right.
I'm just going to go on an island and live by myself. And look out, a crab bit my toe. It got infected. I lost my leg and died. So there you go.
It's all your fault.
All right, I think we need a break.
Let's do it. After that crab
Our
attack,
brain needs a break,
I
yeah.
gotta take a break. We'll be right back after this message from Alamo.
History remembers the heroes. We remember the truth. Alamo, Voice of Freedom, tells the untold story of Joe, an enslaved man who walked out of the rubble of the Alamo, carrying more than scars. He carried the truth. Through love, loyalty, betrayal, and blood, this cinematic podcast series pulls back the curtain on the myth to reveal the people who lived, fought, and died behind the legend. From the shadows of revolution to the fire of battle, their voices rise. This isn't just history, it's memory reclaimed. One mission, one survivor, one story you've never heard until now. Alamo, Voice of Freedom, on all major podcast platforms.
Welcome back, segment 3. That was a message from Alamo, the Voice of Freedom. Get it on all of your podcast suppliers. It's out now. Episodes coming out weekly. Sam, tell me a little bit about what's going to happen this season. We've got some exciting things. I know you've been making some exciting plans. Let's get our audience excited for season 2.
It sounds exciting. How the brain is exciting. Well, but let me just tell you, one of our episodes is going to look at genius and whether genius requires so much of the brain that you can't be a normal person. One is, I know both you and James are going to be excited about. One is going to look at the brain and mind-altering drugs and our evolution from these things as party drugs to now seeing them as possibly treatments for certain conditions. One episode we're going to talk about why we like to be around each other and why when we're not, it's not good for you. One episode we're going to talk about time and how the brain evolved to deal with time and why some people are basically time blind. They're always late, they can't track time, they don't, and the rest of us can do it pretty well. We'll talk about memory, and I think for our last episode this season, we're going to talk about brains without bodies and what will the future hold.
What that might be.
When that might be, and will we be able to take everything in your brain, not your physical brain, but find a way
To download it.
download the neural networks that you've created and create you. You know, there's that reality, not reality, but that sitcom where they figured out how to do that, and then people can live forever in the cloud. And depending on the amount of money you have, you live in a beautiful estate or you live in, purgatory, whatever, right? And you can visit your ancestors and your relatives, and you can, this is the start of creating an avatar of yourself, right? One that can really interact. James and I have been talking to some AI developers to see, could we create an AI of me that doesn't just deliver messages, but long after I'm gone, you could call it up and say, so Sam, what do you think about this? And I could actually think about it and give you a novel answer, not a prepackaged programmed answer.
But based on your knowledge.
Based on my knowledge, what's
And
in
experience.
my brain. And experience. And then the next question is, could I keep learning? Could you feed my digital person as new knowledge comes about? Could you feed me new information? And could I continue to evolve in my thoughts and feelings? Anyway, we'll...
That's exciting.
So I
It'll
think
be
we've got,
subscription based.
yeah. I think we have some things that... I don't know if we'll ever have a third season. Third seasons, you sort of... Let's see. Your brain on boredom, maybe. I don't know.
Season 3. That's the title.
That's the title. And your brain on writer's block. And the whole show is us sitting like this. We say nothing for 60 minutes. Right? But
That's
again,
not you, though, Sam.
That's not me, no.
No.
So it's interesting that because when we first opened the episode, it seemed so compartmentalized. Danger. But now you realize how our efforts on an evolutionary basis to manage danger and risk has influenced not only how our brains have evolved and developed, because evolution is a slow process, and cultural evolution and technological evolution has become a very fast process, right? So
Very fast.
The two clash, but you can see how our efforts to stay safe is tied to everything. It's tied to the kid in second grade who doesn't read very well, who when the teacher asks him to read, says, I don't want to, because he'd rather have the teacher think he doesn't want to read than risk the danger of having the teacher know he can't read. But even there, everything
Fear-based.
is fear-based. Our whole culture is, but the problem is we don't live on savannas anymore. We live in cities, and our brains have not caught up, and our brains still perceive threats as life or death. This is not life or death. And the kid who has a meltdown because mom says you can't stay up late or you can't go, who has a nervous system that's so hyperreactive that they perceive it's going to be the end of the world if I don't get to do this. And you might say, how is that dangerous? But in the kid's mind,
Right.
It's dangerous. Or the family I talked to today with a little girl who's really bright and wonderful, but her whole judgment of herself is based on what she thinks other people think or what she thinks other people want, and not kind of internalized. So she makes a lot of decisions based on what she thinks people want, not what's necessarily best for her. So I guess we could end here and say, we're screwed. There's no hope. At some point, when you look at, if you look at my Substack that's just come out for the holidays, I talk about what happened to Rome, what happened to other civilizations. And when you examine what happened to the people, to the families, to the economy, you begin to see a lot of similarities in what's going on in the world today. And, it isn't a reason to have hope. It's a reason to be dogmatic that we can use that prefrontal cortex maybe to do something different. But so far, it's like they're all village idiots. I'm sorry to say that, but it's like all these people who are leading our country, I don't care what side of the fence they're on. And all of these university faculty their job is to prepare people to be rational thinkers who seem to think their job is to influence people to think the way they do. They're all village idiots. And I just don't, I just wish everybody would stop and say, okay, Sam, tell us what to do. Right? That's my narcissistic egos. But they don't have to listen to me. Let's take a group of evolutionary scientists and a group of historians and a group of economists. Let's take people like Harari, who wrote about the history of our species. Let's bring those people together and let them come back and say, this is probably what we need to do, because what we're doing is going in the wrong direction. Whether you like the current political climate or don't like the current, yeah, there are good things happening, and there are bad things happening, and there are irrational things people think are happening that aren't happening. But I'm worried if we don't do something. And I do think that there are plenty of things we can do because our brains are being rewired. You live with stress all day, then that's all you see. That's all you know. You live with fear all day, that's all you see. That's all you know. I worked with a boy years ago who was in a very abusive home, and they finally got him out of that home. And the way he survived being in that home, physically abused and sexually abused, the way he survived, he was only 9, was reading. And when I first met him, he was in foster care, and he had a backpack full of books that he'd collected. People had given him books in the foster care. And he told me that when things were bad, he would read because it would take him someplace else. That the words were like prisoners on the page, which I thought was a interesting analogy. Yeah. So the first time I meet him, he takes out these books and he lays them next to each other like tiles on the floor. And they're kids' books about different series and science books. He's got about 20 in that backpack. It's a pretty heavy backpack. He takes it with him every place he goes, he tells me. I asked him if I could help him make some book plates with his name on it to put in the book. This was 25 years ago. I don't know what happened to him. And he said, why would I want to do that? And I said, well, so if you lend the book to somebody, you'll know it's yours. And he said, well, I'm not giving these books to anybody.
Never, yeah.
And not only that, I said, well, why do you carry them around? Because I never know when I'm going to have to leave. Right? Because he'd been bumped around because he was a very bright but very difficult kid because of the environment he came from. His way of surviving is, I'm in danger mode all the time, screw you, and not to be compliant and not to listen and not to do right. That's what danger does to you, over time. So do I think we all need to meditate? Well, I don't know. But we all need to do something.
It's that de-stress,
it's that
whatever
it's that
it is.
Bad. And we need to have some rational lens that allows us to look at the world and think in a logical, rational way about what's going on. and not to make it worse by tit for tat and responding and tit for tat and responding. I think that's where it's going wrong. And
Sometimes I feel that's only going to get worse. It doesn't. I feel like sometimes maybe we've passed the point of no return as far as tit for tat.
Right, but I think that it requires a change. I think we have to understand that our fear system isn't broken. It's doing what it evolved
what it's supposed to do.
It's overprotective. It's the well-meaning guard dog.
And it's being overloaded.
Well, and I would say attacked in our world today.
Absolutely.
Because there are smart people that know, I can prey upon this mind.
People prey on the fear.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why it's a self-fulfilling kind of thing. So you turn the TV on, right? First commercial. Somebody could be stealing your house. You need title protection. Now, do you really need title protection? I don't know enough about it to know, but I do know that it's not as easy as they say it is for people to, quote, steal your house. On my TikTok, which if you don't subscribe to, your listeners should, it's at Common Sense Science, we have a new series called How Stupid Do You Think We Are? And it hasn't gotten a lot of traction yet, but I'm hoping it will, because the next commercial, after the one about your mortgage, is about Medicare Part C and how you better get Medicare Part C because otherwise you'll be out in the cold. And
A and B aren't enough.
Yeah.
And the next one after that is for Elmer Fudd's, I call him Elmer Fudd, but Elmer Fudd's pulverized vegetables. And if you don't eat them, you'll die. And look at me, I'm 95, Elmer says, and I've eaten them and I'm surviving. Right? It's the irony of that was
my first job at KSL Television was to do Sweep Weeks promos. Is radon in your house?
There you go.
There you go.
Is your refrigerator killing you? And the trick was, let's get ratings by doing the scary commercials.
Right, because people gravitate towards being afraid, which is why we talked about this in a previous episode. There's safety in being afraid watching a movie because it's not really dangerous, right?
Right.
Now, if the character in the movie climbed out of the screen, all right, so if you remember Woody Allen's one of Purple Rain, that was
Purple Rose of
Cairo.
Yeah.
The actor comes out of the screen, right? So it gave me an idea for a horror movie where these people go to the movie, right? And the monster climbs out of the screen, kills everybody in the movie house, right? And runs rampant. And the whole movie is about how to get him to go back into the movie and leave us alone, right? So there are things we can do, right? I think we have to, even the most vicious guard dog can be trained. Now, he's still looking for danger, right? But he's not biting your leg off.
Right.
So somehow, and I think it means surrounding yourself with people you care about and care about you. I think it's practicing rational thinking and teaching kids how to think rationally. So let's think for a minute about anxiety, because when people worry, it kicks in this fear system that we've talked about. So you can treat it with a medication, because we found certain substances, particularly serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors that push more serotonin into the bloodstream, seems to help them function somewhat better. It's not a cure. And it doesn't mean that your worry is caused by not having enough serotonin. That doesn't mean that. Of course, we don't know that. Because, again, you could have a headache for some reason and take an aspirin, the headache goes away. It doesn't mean the headache was caused by lack of aspirin. The intervention that helps doesn't have to be the cause that drives the absence of it doesn't necessarily drive the problem, right? And so when you think about worry, yeah, there are medicines that can help with that, but by far the best long-term intervention for worry is learning to think differently. Even OCD, it takes a long time, but to change your mind, not your physical brain, but to change how effectively your mind regulates your physical brain. So I teach you to relax, and I teach you by successive approximation how to get into an elevator without having a nervous breakdown. And lo and behold, you can get into elevators. Do you like it? No. Are you a little anxious when you're in the elevator? Yes. Can I measure your breathing and heart rate and find it's a little elevated? Yes. But I also find that now your mind can control that. And your mind says, I don't like this, but I need to get up to the 20th floor. I'm going to get in the elevator and go.
Do it.
And do it. So,
like you said earlier, you are using a sophisticated way to say to the brain, calm down.
Right.
Yeah.
But it has to come from inside.
Right.
Right. And we have to teach kids to do it. So I'm reminded by a parable told by a friend of mine, James Comer. James Comer is a pediatrician, developmental pediatrician at Yale, who developed a school, what does he call it, school intervention program. They go into very low-income schools, and they don't work on the curriculum. They work on the people getting along, people solving problems. It's called a school development program. Somebody wants to look it up. And they've been very successful. And grades go up. Achievement goes up because the community is more functional, right? Okay. So Dr. Comer tells a story of a man who goes out fishing. And he's floating down the river. So it's an indigenous man. He's got a canoe, and he's floating down the river. And suddenly he sees a boy drowning. So he picks the boy up, and he puts him in the boat and looks around. And there's another boy drowning. Picks him up, puts him in the boat. Now he's got two boys in the boat, so he starts to paddle to shore. And when he looks upstream, there's hundreds of thousands of children floating down the river drowning. And there's room in the boat, and the boys say, can we pick up that kid and that one? No, he answers. I need to get to the shore and go upriver and find out who's throwing kids in the river and make them stop. So the river are the adversities that face kids today, which in our multiple episodes we've talked about. Today's kids post-COVID, teenagers, 1 out of 2 chance of major depression. I just wrote a white paper on what I consider the Utah Mental Health Initiative that we've just posted, and it's my view that we're 2/3 short of the services we need, just given the statistics of mental health today. And how are we going to do it? And how are we going to provide, talk about danger, how are we going to provide the law enforcement officers for whom 1/3 of their calls really don't involve danger? You don't know that, but don't involve danger. Do we teach them how to be social workers and give them extra pay if they want to do that? What do we? Anyway, you can look at my white paper because we need 3 times the money as well. And of course, my solution is tax people who come to visit. So, which is what everybody does: hotel tax, whatever. But we need to do something. So he looks at this scenario and says, basically, the river are the adversities affecting kids, and the man is you and I, but the intervention is tertiary. We've talked about this, that our view of mental health is if you have it, that's great. If you don't have it, come here and let me see what I can do about it. We haven't adopted the idea that mental health in our world today, given our brains and our nervous system, given the world we've created, is something you have to work at. You're not just lucky to have, like health, the same way we look at health. And we need to start teaching kids how to do it. We need to stress inoculate them. I'm not suggesting we have to put every kid in counseling. I grew up in New York City where everybody went to counseling. Sure. Maybe you have 2 counselors, right? Yeah. One for school and one for home, whatever. I'm just suggesting that if you teach people how to manage stress before it falls on their shoulders, and you give them opportunities to demonstrate competence in that management, they do better. We know that. And if we don't start doing that, things are going to just continue. And, maybe our 8th year of this podcast will be The sky is falling, the world is ending. Let's look for places to hide, because that's what you do when you're in danger. You either strike out or you run away and hide, and neither one solves any problem.
Right.
What about the adult that seems addicted to negativity on social media or the news? They just
right
take it all in all day. Is there hope
the good
for them?
news,
What can they do?
Right. The good news is boring. Imagine if the news started with and today, Johnny did this and Mrs. Jones did this and look at all the wonderful things happen and they saved a kitten in a tree, and people would change the channel. We have this approach avoidance to everybody else's danger. We're seduced by it. We want to hear why it's all these shows about murderers and unsolved crimes, and the podcasts that are most successful are about the axe
true
murder.
crime. Yeah,
and when you look at what people go to, that's what they go to. And I had a kid once, we were talking about exactly that. What kind of news? And he said, well, the good news doesn't help me, but the bad news might help me, because maybe it'll happen to me one day and I'll see what they did. Or so there's even an educational component.
There you go. There's that sound in the cave again.
Right.
This might help me.
Right. So is it hopeless? But I don't know that it's hopeless. But there's this kind of destiny, like you're on this. If you remember the Harry Chapin song of the 20,000 pounds of bananas that were in the truck heading down the hill, and it was 20,000 pounds of bananas. and I loved Harry Chapin. It's sad that he died, but his songs were evocatively telling about the human condition and human nature, right? And that 20,000 pound truck is us heading down the hill, knowing we're going to crash, and those bananas are going to go everywhere.
And it's interesting that you bring up that. So I work on another series that's on TikTok and Instagram where we do positive things for people. And it's very popular. Millions and millions and millions of views. However, our biggest comment is always, this isn't real. We gave somebody their groceries, or we gave somebody $100. And all the comments are like, this is really fun, but it's not real.
Well, who's the influencer? Isn't he the game player who's given away a
Mr.
House
Beast and
a
guys
car
like
to
that.
people?
Yeah,
There's a
and-
lot of them.
Yeah.
there's a lot of them. And I think it's nice. They genuinely want to. I think this guy, Beast, really wants to help people. I think it's great.
Yeah.
But really, it's promotion for him more than anything else,
You
right?
get sponsorships and
And wasn't there a TV show years ago called Millionaire for a Day or something, where they showed up and they gave you just
or
gave you
fixed
money.
your house, or
Right. Those are nice things, but it's not going to change the kind of danger that.
Yeah. Well,
that drives us.
that's what I thought was interesting, was that people will look at the dangerous stuff and buy into it immediately because it's hardwired,
and then question the
and
good.
then question the good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Fascinating.
Because that's how we survived.
Yeah.
Now, I'll leave you with this. Let's suppose the Garden of Eden really existed. And let's suppose that instead of evolution creating us, this is not an argument against religion, but let's suppose there was a deity that came and said, here you guys are. Here's man, here's woman. Right? And I'm going to put you in a place where there's no danger and no risk, and all your needs are met. Right? And again, it's a parable that didn't start in the Bible. It started in the book of Ur. The book of Ur goes back long before the Bible, and a lot of those stories were moved into the Bible because they make a big splash, like the world was created in 7 days. Because if you say, the world was created in 6 billion years, not very interesting. But if you say the world was created in 7 days, oh my God, I want to know all about that. So that's what they did. The Bible was written by a few authors over a few hundred years. It wasn't one guy. But let's suppose the Garden of Eden had taken place. And let's suppose the snake came up to Eve and said, God said you can have anything but don't eat these apples, right? And as he coerced her, Adam showed up with a large sharpened stick and stabbed that snake right through the head. Dead snake. And Eve said, good, I'm glad we got rid of him. He was a pain in the ass. He was making me worried, right? So what if the world evolved that way? What if there was no danger? What if there was no risk?
Or we knew how to stamp it out.
Or we knew how to kind of get rid of it, right? But I hadn't thought of that because I'm killing the snake off as opposed to saying there never was a snake. But imagine it would be a pretty boring world, right? Because there'd be no risk, no danger. Everybody would love everybody else. There'd be like everybody would do everything everybody said. It's like that Ricky Gervais movie where he finds himself the only person who can tell a lie.
All right.
Right. And suddenly they think after a period of time, they think he's God, right? He evolves to a point where they believe he is God, right?
So both extremes are bad.
So both extremes probably are not good. And the problem, I think, is we wouldn't have had this discussion. We can leave it with this. We wouldn't have had this discussion 300 years ago or 200 years ago because life didn't change that much. But the pace at which technology, you turn on the news and it's the AI wars and, AI. And if you look at what AI can do now and you consider that it's evolving exponentially, meaning not 2 + 2 + 2, but 2 times a factor of 6, 8, 10, we really can't understand what that kind of world is going to be like. And no one's yet written a movie script that really helps us understand, because the Schwarzenegger idea of the robots taking over or HAL taking over in the spaceship, I mean, from my view, those are very juvenile kind of fictionalization of what happens when the robots take over, right? Mm-hmm. And then there was the other cartoon, WALL-E. Was it WALL-E or
WALL-E.
one where he ends up on a spaceship where everybody's obese because nobody does anything and everything is done for them and they, right.
It's kind of happening now, a little
right.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know where the solution lies, but we're going to have to use the front of our brains to work our way through this, or these basic instincts that got us where we are, a fear of difference, an irrational belief, an aggressive response to even a perceived threat, all of it built around danger. And so I'll leave you with what is my famous robot saying in the history of all robots. Danger, Will Robinson, danger, danger. Right, we all need a robot to remind us. Not the new robot, because he was a little creepy.
Yeah.
But the old robot with the glass head that lit up. And anyway, thanks you for listening, everybody.
Thank you for being here for episode 1 of season 2. I want to thank our brainers. Welcome back. Remember, brainers, this show will keep you healthy and happy. Isn't that right, Sam?
That's right. It's an exercise for your brain.
There you go. We'll see you next time.
Just because we said it doesn't mean it's true. You're on your own.